I never imagined that the most dangerous moment of my life would begin with perfect silence. No alarms. No weapons pointed at my head. No desperate negotiations. Just a massive throne room stretching farther than my eyes could follow, lined with soldiers who had conquered more worlds than humanity had ever discovered. Every one of them stood perfectly still, their silver armor reflecting the pale light pouring through windows that overlooked an entire alien capital. At the far end of the chamber sat the woman responsible for it all. The alien Empress. According to every intelligence report Earth had gathered during first contact, she ruled over more than 400 star systems. Entire civilizations surrendered the moment her fleets arrived. Not because her weapons were superior, but because resistance simply disappeared. Her species possessed psychic abilities unlike anything our scientists believed possible. They could influence thoughts, suppress fear, erase aggression, and convince entire governments that surrender was the only rational decision. History across the galaxy had become painfully predictable. Her fleets entered orbit. Leaders attempted negotiations. Within hours, those same leaders voluntarily handed over control of their worlds. No massacres. No prolonged wars. Just peaceful submission followed by permanent obedience. The galaxy called it mercy. Others called it perfection. On Earth, we called it slavery. That was why every military analyst believed humanity had no chance. We had only recently discovered faster-than-light communication, while her empire had spent thousands of years perfecting technologies we couldn't even understand. If she wanted Earth, there was nothing we could do to stop her. At least, that's what everyone believed. Then something happened that no one had ever witnessed before. Her first psychic assault failed. Then the second. Then every attempt after that. Across Earth, people reported strange headaches, brief moments of dizziness, and vivid dreams that vanished after waking. Our medical networks recorded millions of similar experiences within a single day. Scientists searched for toxins, radiation, viruses, anything that could explain it. They found nothing. Whatever had reached into human minds simply couldn't stay there. The effect collapsed almost instantly. Her invasion fleet never advanced. Instead, every ship remained in orbit watching. Waiting. Neither side understood what had happened. Humanity celebrated what looked like a miraculous victory, but nobody knew why we had won without firing a single shot. Governments prepared for the inevitable second attack while scientists worked around the clock searching for answers hidden somewhere inside the human brain. None of them found the truth. Not before I did. Which was strange, because I wasn't anyone important. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't a diplomat. I didn't command fleets or negotiate treaties. I spent most of my days maintaining orbital communication arrays above Earth. My job was painfully ordinary. If satellites stopped talking to each other, my team fixed them. If transmission relays drifted out of alignment, we corrected them. Nobody wrote books about engineers who spent more time with diagnostic software than with people. That routine ended the day an unidentified vessel appeared beside my maintenance platform. There were no warning shots. No dramatic speeches. One moment I was recalibrating an antenna. The next, my entire station disappeared inside a field of blue light. When I opened my eyes, I expected prison. Instead, I found myself inside luxurious living quarters larger than my apartment back home. Fresh food appeared whenever I asked. Medical staff examined me daily. No restraints. No interrogations. No threats. Every request I made was answered politely. At first, I assumed it was psychological warfare. Make the prisoner comfortable before asking questions. Except nobody asked me anything. Days passed. Then weeks. Every guard I encountered behaved strangely around me. They weren't hostile. If anything, they seemed cautious. Some refused to make eye contact. Others quietly stepped aside whenever I approached, almost as if they expected something impossible to happen. One day I finally asked one of them why everyone treated me differently. He hesitated before answering. "I've never seen anyone your species before." "That's not what I asked?" Another pause. You make people uncomfortable. I laughed. I'm an engineer. He shook his head. No. His voice became almost nervous. We cannot hear you. That answer made no sense. Before I could ask another question, he ended the conversation and escorted me through corridors unlike anything built by human hands. Massive living architecture curved around impossible angles, glowing with veins of soft blue energy beneath transparent walls. Everything felt alive without actually being biological. Eventually we reached enormous doors that opened without a sound. Beyond them waited the throne room. The guards stopped several meters behind me. None of them followed. I walked alone toward the ruler whose name inspired fear across the known galaxy. She watched me approach without speaking. Every report described her as cold, calculating, incapable of hesitation. The woman sitting before me looked exactly like those reports suggested. Calm eyes. Perfect posture. Absolute confidence. Someone accustomed to making decisions affecting trillions of lives. Yet there was something unexpected. She looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone carrying a burden no empire could solve. When I finally stood before the throne, she dismissed every advisor, every guard, every servant with a single gesture. Within seconds, the chamber was empty. Only the two of us remained. She studied me for what felt like an eternity before speaking. You know who I am? I nodded. You've conquered half the galaxy. A little more than half. There wasn't even pride in her voice. Just fact. I assume this is where you demand Earth's surrender. She slowly shook her head. No. That single word completely destroyed every expectation I'd built since my capture. I did not bring you here to discuss Earth's surrender. Then why am I here? She stood and walked down the steps toward me. For the first time, I realized she wasn't surrounded by guards anymore. She had deliberately chosen to stand alone. Close enough that, if I had somehow been foolish enough to attack, nobody could have stopped me immediately. It was a level of trust that made no sense. When she finally stopped, her next words made even less. I wish to offer you a position beside me. I stared at her. I don't understand. You would stand second only to the imperial throne. You would command fleets larger than entire civilizations possess. Every resource within my empire would be available to you. Wealth would become meaningless. Your lifespan would be extended beyond anything your species currently believes possible. I kept waiting for the catch. It never came. She simply looked at me as if the offer explained itself. Finally, I asked the obvious question. Why would I ever accept that? Because together we may yet save this galaxy. I almost laughed. The woman who conquered 400 civilizations is asking an orbital maintenance engineer to save the galaxy? Yes. You're serious. I have never been more serious. Everything about the conversation felt wrong. If this was manipulation, it was unlike any strategy humans understood. If it wasn't manipulation, then something far worse was happening. I took a slow breath before giving my answer. No. She didn't react. I won't help enslave humanity. I am not asking you to. I won't stand beside someone who built an empire by controlling minds. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, I looked directly into her eyes. If I'm so ordinary, why me? For the first time since entering the room, the confidence disappeared from her face. The woman feared by thousands of worlds looked away. When she spoke again, her voice had become almost painfully quiet. Because if you refuse... She paused. My empire dies. My empire dies. Those 4 words hung between us longer than any threat could have. I searched her face for deception, expecting to find the slightest hint of manipulation. Instead, I saw exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of someone losing a war, but of someone who had spent years carrying a secret no one else could understand. I don't believe you, I finally said. I expected that. You're the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. Power has limits. You've conquered hundreds of civilizations. I did. You command fleets capable of destroying planets. I do. Then what could possibly threaten you? She walked toward one of the enormous windows overlooking the endless lights of her capital. Thousands of ships floated peacefully above the planet, each connected by streams of blue energy that shimmered like veins through space. They are beautiful, aren't they? I looked outside. It looks peaceful. It is. She placed a hand against the transparent wall. That is precisely the problem. I frowned. My people evolved differently from yours. Long before we reached space, we discovered that our minds could communicate directly. Thoughts became language. Emotions became information. Knowledge passed from one generation to another without books or computers. Telepathy. A primitive word, but accurate enough. She watched the glowing streams between the ships. As our civilization advanced, every breakthrough strengthened that connection. Every citizen became part of something larger than themselves. Our scientists no longer worked alone. Our soldiers fought as one mind. Disease became nearly impossible because every doctor shared knowledge instantly. Crime almost disappeared because lies could not survive. She smiled faintly. For thousands of years, we believed we had achieved perfection. And then? Then we found the ruins. The warmth disappeared from her voice. Ruins of what? The First Empire. I stayed silent. It existed millions of years before my species learned to shape metal. They colonized entire galaxies. Their technology surpassed anything we possess today. What happened to them? They vanished. No war? None. No supernova? She shook her head. No natural disaster. Then where did they go? They simply stopped. I waited for more. She continued. We found cities completely intact. Power systems still functioning. Machines still operating exactly as designed. But no people. Not one. The story sounded impossible. Maybe they left. They didn't. She looked directly at me. Their meals were still on their tables. A chill ran through me. They disappeared while living normal lives. I tried to rationalize it. There has to be an explanation. There was. She touched a control panel beside the window. A holographic projection filled the air between us. Ancient symbols scrolled across the display before automatically translating into a language I could read. The First Empire documented everything. The recording showed countless stars connected by brilliant lines of light. They also possessed a civilization built entirely upon linked consciousness. The image suddenly changed. Entire regions of stars began going dark. One after another. Not exploding. Simply disappearing. No distress signals were ever recorded. The darkness spread steadily across the map. They believed an enemy civilization was attacking them. Another section vanished. So they prepared fleets. More darkness. They found nothing. The lights continued dying. Then they believed it was a plague. Nothing changed. They quarantined entire systems. Still the darkness spread. Eventually they realized the truth. The final light disappeared. It wasn't hunting worlds. She looked at me. It was hunting minds. The hologram vanished. Silence returned. I don't understand. Neither did they. She activated another projection. This time it displayed fragments of translated records recovered from the ruins. Every entry became more desperate than the last. We cannot detect it. It ignores matter. It ignores energy. It follows thought itself. The final surviving record contained only one sentence. Do not become one mind. The message ended there. I slowly looked back at the Empress. You're saying something erased an entire civilization because they were connected? It consumed them. Consumed how? We still don't know. You've never seen it? No one who has survived long enough to describe it. She took a slow breath. My archaeologists believe the First Empire was unique. Another star map appeared. Then another. Then another. Each represented civilizations separated by millions of years. Each ended exactly the same way. Perfect cities. No inhabitants. No bodies. No evidence of violence. Just absence. After discovering the fourth civilization, she said quietly, we stopped calling it coincidence. I felt the room becoming colder. How many? 27. My stomach tightened. 27 civilizations disappeared? She nodded once. Every one of them developed advanced psychic networks before vanishing. I looked again toward the glowing city outside. Your empire is the largest psychic civilization in history. The realization hit me instantly. You think you're next? I know we are. How? She expanded another projection. It displayed thousands of blue points representing her worlds. One small red signal blinked beyond the edge of known space. It appeared 3 years ago. The red point moved. Slowly. Steadily. Always toward the Empire. It doesn't travel faster than light? No. It doesn't need to. She enlarged the map. Every year the signal became stronger. Our deepest observation stations have gone silent one by one. You sent fleets? They found empty stations. No battle damage. No. No survivors. No. Just nothing. Either of us spoke for several seconds. Then I asked the question that mattered. If you've known this for years, why invade Earth? We never intended to invade. I stared at her. Our first contact fleet carried no planetary assault weapons. But your psychic attack was a test. She admitted it without hesitation. We had discovered references suggesting one civilization survived contact with the entity longer than expected. Why? They possess fragmented consciousness. I didn't understand. Their minds couldn't synchronize completely. She looked directly into my eyes. When our fleet reached Earth, we detected something impossible. She changed the display again. This time it showed scans of the human brain. Billions of constantly changing neural pathways twisted into patterns unlike anything I'd ever seen. Our psychic field entered your atmosphere expecting rapid synchronization. The simulation attempted to connect thousands of human minds. Every connection collapsed. Again. 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 Your thoughts refused to stabilize. The simulation sped up. No matter what it tried, every brain behaved differently. Our strongest telepaths described human consciousness as listening to billions of radios playing different songs at the same time. I couldn't help smiling. Sounds about right. It was chaos. It still is. She almost smiled herself. Exactly. She enlarged one section of the simulation. One human brain stood out. Unlike the others, every attempt to establish psychic contact failed instantly. Not seconds. Instantly. The field didn't weaken. It simply ceased to exist. What am I looking at? The individual who caused our researchers to abandon every existing theory. The hologram rotated until the skin filled the room. Then my own face appeared beside it. I froze. Our ancient archival intelligence compared your neural activity against every surviving record recovered from those lost civilizations. She paused. It found one match. I felt my heartbeat quicken. What match? It classified you as a cognitive anomaly. I swallowed. What does that mean? She met my eyes with absolute certainty. It gave you a designation no living being has carried for millions of years. Her voice became almost a whisper. The null mind. She took one final step closer. And according to the oldest artificial intelligence in existence, you are the strongest one it has ever detected. I couldn't stop staring at the image of my own brain floating between us. For years I'd thought of myself as painfully average. I repaired satellites, paid my bills on time, forgot birthdays more often than I should have. And somehow I was now being told that an intelligence older than recorded history considered me unique. There has to be a mistake, I said. There isn't. I'm not special. You misunderstand. She dismissed the hologram with a wave of her hand. You are not special because you possess extraordinary abilities. Then why me? Because you possess something my people never evolved. Which is absolute cognitive independence. I folded my arms. That's a very impressive way of calling someone stubborn. She gave the faintest smile. It is also accurate. Despite everything she had revealed, my answer hadn't changed. I'm still not helping you. The smile disappeared. You believe refusing protects your species. It does. You believe my empire deserves its fate. I didn't answer. She already knew. I've read the records, I finally said. Entire civilizations lost their freedom because of your psychic domination. Maybe you called it peaceful unification, but they never had a real choice. My predecessors believed unity ended suffering. And were they wrong? She looked toward the distant skyline. Yes. It was the first time she'd openly admitted it. But intentions do not erase consequences. They don't? I shook my head. So why should humanity save the empire responsible for all of that? Her reply came without hesitation. Because the billions living inside it today are not responsible for the decisions of those who built it. That answer stayed with me. I hated that it made sense. I could condemn an empire. Could I condemn children born into it? Scientists. Farmers. Engineers. People who had never chosen the system they inherited. The silence ended when enormous doors burst open. Several armored figures entered the chamber, their uniforms far more elaborate than the soldiers I'd seen before. Unlike the Empress, none of them bothered hiding their hostility. One of them pointed directly at me. So this is the human. Another looked at the Empress. You dismissed the High Council for this? The Empress's expression hardened instantly. This meeting is private. It no longer can be. The oldest among them stepped forward. Our fleets have confirmed another observation station has gone silent. I know. And yet you continue wasting time negotiating with prey. I'm negotiating with our only chance. The chamber erupted with overlapping voices. Impossible. A primitive species cannot save us. Destroy Earth before it contaminates the Empire. They're unstable. They're dangerous. They're immune. That final word silenced everyone. Every council member turned toward me. One of them narrowed his eyes. I want proof. Before I understood what was happening, he lifted one hand toward me. The air became strangely heavy. Invisible pressure pushed against my thoughts. It wasn't painful. It felt more like someone trying to remember a dream that refused to appear. Then, nothing. The sensation vanished. The council member frowned. He tried again. This time veins of blue light spread beneath his skin as he focused harder. The pressure returned for barely a heartbeat before collapsing completely. His eyes widened. It failed. Another council member stepped forward. Together they concentrated. The room filled with shimmering waves of psychic energy. The floor vibrated. The windows hummed. Every light flickered. I remained exactly where I was. Watching. Waiting. Feeling absolutely nothing. One by one they stopped. Confusion replaced arrogance. The oldest advisor looked directly at the Empress. It is true. I told you. No living mind should reject synchronized influence. She answered quietly. And yet he does. The council no longer looked angry. Now they looked afraid. One of them whispered something in a language I couldn't understand. The Empress translated anyway. He believes your existence is an evolutionary threat. To who? Everyone. Another advisor immediately spoke. The human cannot be allowed to live. The Empress stepped between them and me. No. He will destabilize the Empire. No. Our citizens will question everything. No. If one species can reject unity, others will demand independence. She didn't move. They already deserve it. The room fell silent again. Every advisor stared at her. One of them spoke carefully. You no longer believe in the doctrine. She looked each of them in the eye. I have not believed in it for years. That confession changed everything. I wasn't witnessing political disagreement. I was watching an empire crack from the inside. The oldest council member slowly lowered his head. Then history was correct. What history? He ignored me. The Empire dies before the enemy arrives. Several guards suddenly entered. For a moment I thought they had come to arrest the council. Instead, they formed a defensive circle around me. The Empress had expected this. The advisors left without another word. None of them looked defeated. They looked determined. I turned toward her. They're going to kill me. Yes. You knew that would happen. I did. And you still brought me here. They needed to see the truth with their own eyes. I rubbed my forehead. This keeps getting worse. It will. Over the following days, I learned just how divided her empire had become. Some military commanders supported her. Others openly questioned her judgment. Several planetary governors demanded my immediate execution. A few secretly contacted Earth, hoping to provoke a war that would unite the Empire against a common enemy before internal conflict spread further. The assassination attempt came sooner than I expected. I was walking through one of the palace gardens with only 2 guards nearby when every person around me froze. Garden workers. Servants. Even the guards. All of them stood perfectly still. Their eyes glowed with the same blue light. One woman calmly picked up a maintenance tool from the ground and walked toward me. There was no anger in her face. No emotion at all. Only purpose. More people joined her. 10. 20. Then dozens. None carried conventional weapons. They didn't need them. The guards struggled to move, trapped inside whatever psychic command had taken hold of them. I was the only person unaffected. The woman reached me first. She raised the metal tool. Then suddenly stopped. She blinked several times. Confusion replaced the empty expression. She looked around in horror. What? The others collapsed almost simultaneously. The blue light disappeared from every eye. The guards recovered moments later, equally confused. Medical teams arrived within minutes. No one understood why the psychic command had failed the instant it reached me. The news spread across the capital before sunset. The human had broken a synchronized command affecting dozens of minds. Not by fighting. Simply by existing. By the next morning, I had become the most controversial individual in the Empire. Some citizens called me a miracle. Others called me a disease. Earth had no idea what was actually happening. The fragmented transmissions reaching home painted a completely different picture. Alien broadcasts showed me walking beside the Empress, standing inside her palace, meeting her officials. Without context, it looked exactly like collaboration. Human governments reached the obvious conclusion. I'd betrayed my species. Military fleets began assembling around Earth's orbital defenses. Civilian broadcasts called me everything from a hostage to a traitor. Watching those reports hurt more than I expected. My family believed I'd chosen the Empire over humanity. My friends believed I'd been brainwashed. Neither explanation was true. I was trying to stop a disaster no one else even knew existed. The weight of that isolation became unbearable. Finally, I asked the Empress to prepare a treaty. She looked surprised. You've made your decision? I've made a condition. I'm listening. If humanity helps save your empire, then everything changes afterward. It already will. No. I looked directly into her eyes. I mean legally. She remained silent. No psychic domination. I continued before she could respond. No forced unity. No hidden control. No exceptions for imperial authority. Every civilization currently under your rule keeps the right to govern itself. Earth remains completely independent. And every future alliance must be voluntary. The room became perfectly still. I knew exactly what I was asking. I wasn't negotiating my future. I was asking the ruler of the greatest empire in history to dismantle the very foundation upon which it had been built. After several long moments, she spoke. I accept. You'll sign it? I'll sign every word. Before sunset, the treaty was completed. The imperial seal touched the document. The moment the final signature appeared, every psychic individual inside the palace suddenly stopped moving. The Empress froze. Her advisors froze. The guards froze. Thousands of voices echoed through the corridors at exactly the same time. Not shouting. Not screaming. Whispering. "It has found us. It has found us." The whisper echoed through every corridor before silence returned just as suddenly as it had disappeared. The Empress was the first to move again. Her expression told me everything. Whatever she had feared for years had finally arrived. Every officer in the palace began receiving emergency transmissions at once. Holographic displays filled the air with reports from every corner of the empire. Observation stations were disappearing. Not exploding. Not transmitting distress calls. Simply vanishing. Entire crews were gone without a trace. The same pattern repeated across system after system. No wreckage. No bodies. No survivors. Only empty stations still orbiting their stars as though everyone aboard had simply ceased to exist. One commander looked at the incoming reports in disbelief. "It bypassed our defense fleets." Another shook his head. "There were no enemies detected." "There never are," the Empress answered quietly. Within hours the first psychic fleets attempted interception. Millions of linked minds coordinated with perfect precision. Every ship executed flawless formations. Every captain reacted at exactly the same moment. Then every transmission stopped. One after another, blue icons representing entire battle groups went dark. No explosions appeared on tactical displays. The fleets simply drifted through space without commands. When recovery teams finally reached them, every vessel remained fully operational. Engines worked. Weapons worked. Life support worked. The crews were gone. The Empire's greatest strength had become its greatest weakness. The enemy wasn't fighting ships. It was following the psychic network connecting every mind together. Every synchronized thought acted like a beacon. Every shared decision made the signal stronger. I looked toward the tactical map covering the command chamber. "What about Earth?" A communications officer checked the data. "No signs of contact." "Because humans aren't connected," I said. The Empress nodded. "It cannot follow what it cannot predict." That sentence gave me an idea. I wasn't a military strategist. I was an engineer. Engineers solve problems by looking for patterns. This thing had destroyed 27 civilizations, which meant it had relied on the same advantage every single time. Order. Every psychic civilization became more efficient by thinking alike. The entity expected that efficiency. Expected identical reactions. Expected perfect coordination. Humanity had never been capable of any of those things. Even during disasters we argued. Improvised. Disagreed. Changed plans halfway through executing them. It drove military instructors crazy. Maybe it could save the galaxy. I turned toward the officers. "Disconnect your fleets." Several stared at me. One actually laughed. "That would destroy battlefield coordination." "Exactly." The room fell silent. The Empress understood first. "Continue." "Stop linking commands." I pointed at the tactical display. "No synchronized targeting. No shared navigation. No collective planning. Give every captain independent authority." The officers immediately objected. "That would create chaos. It would create humanity." They didn't understand. I continued. "The enemy predicts organized minds. So stop being organized." One admiral shook his head. "Our entire military doctrine depends upon synchronization." "Then your doctrine is exactly what it's hunting." The Empress looked around the room. "You heard him." Several officers hesitated. She repeated herself. "Disconnect the network." One by one, psychic links across the surviving fleet were shut down. For the first time in thousands of years, commanders found themselves making decisions alone. Confusion spread immediately. Ships drifted out of formation. Responses slowed. Mistakes multiplied. To the officers it looked like disaster. To me, it looked human. At the same time Earth finally received the truth. The treaty. The archived recordings. The ancient warnings. Everything. Human governments realized the Empire hadn't come to enslave them. It had come searching for the one weakness the ancient enemy could never overcome. Within hours, every available human vessel entered hyperspace. Not warships alone. Cargo transports. Mining ships. Research vessels. Construction platforms. Anything capable of flight. Nobody waited for perfect orders. Captains made their own decisions. Engineers rewired civilian equipment into defensive systems. Mining lasers became weapons. Freighters carried evacuation teams. Scientists transmitted theories that contradicted one another. Pilots ignored recommendations if they found better ideas. It was complete organizational chaos. And somehow, it worked. The entity reached the edge of the combined fleet. For the first time in millions of years, it encountered something impossible. No unified strategy. No predictable chain of command. Every ship behaved differently. One squadron advanced. Another retreated. Some circled stars. Others shut down completely before restarting minutes later. Civilian pilots invented maneuvers that no academy had ever taught. Alien commanders watching human communications became completely bewildered. Everyone argued. Everyone questioned orders. Everyone proposed different solutions simultaneously. The battlefield looked irrational. The enemy couldn't understand it. Its attacks became slower. Less precise. For the first time, observation stations remained occupied. Recovery teams reported survivors. The pattern had broken. I finally understood why. It isn't feeding on intelligence, I told the Empress. It's feeding on certainty. She looked toward me. When billions of minds reach the same conclusion, it knows exactly where consciousness will be. But humans never reach the same conclusion. I smiled. Have you ever met humans? For the first time since I'd known her. She laughed. It lasted only a moment. It was enough. Together we developed one final plan. Every surviving human ship would broadcast millions of constantly changing mathematical patterns, navigation routes, engineering calculations, personal conversations, music, arguments, jokes, unfinished ideas, random memories, contradictory strategies and spontaneous decisions. Not because they carried information. Because they carried unpredictability. The entire human race became one enormous source of cognitive noise. The entity tried to follow. Every second the patterns changed. Every prediction failed. Every calculation contradicted the last. The more it searched for order, the less it found. Its own awareness fractured beneath an endless flood of possibilities. The ancient predator had evolved to consume perfect synchronization. Humanity offered it infinite uncertainty. For the first time in millions of years, the hunter became lost. The red signal that had crossed galaxies slowly began breaking apart. Then faded completely. No explosion. No final battle. Only silence. The oldest threat in recorded history had defeated itself trying to understand a species that couldn't even agree with itself. The war ended without humanity firing the decisive shot. Months later, representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered inside the same throne room where I had first met the Empress. This time there were no conquered rulers kneeling before her. Only equals. She fulfilled every promise. The treaty became permanent law. Psychic domination was abolished across the empire. Every member civilization received the right to govern itself. The empire itself ceased to exist, replaced by a galactic alliance built on voluntary cooperation instead of compulsory unity. When the ceremony ended, the Empress approached me carrying the imperial crown. It belongs to you if you wish. I looked at it for several seconds before gently pushing it back toward her. I was never here to rule. You saved every civilization represented in this room. No. I smiled. We reminded them of something they've forgotten. And what is that? Freedom is messy. It creates disagreements. It creates mistakes. It creates uncertainty. But that's exactly why it survives. She nodded slowly. Our greatest achievement was unity. And our greatest strength was never having it. I returned to Earth shortly afterward. My old job was still waiting. The communication arrays still needed repairs. Satellites still drifted out of alignment. Life felt wonderfully ordinary again. Sometimes I looked into the night sky knowing billions of beings were alive because humanity had refused to think like everyone else. For centuries the galaxy believed perfection was the highest form of civilization. They were wrong. Perfection is predictable. Predictable things can be conquered. Humanity never became the strongest species. We never built the biggest fleets. We never possessed the most advanced technology. What we possessed was something far rarer. The freedom to think differently. In the end, that single flaw in human nature became the one thing no force in the universe could ever control. And that was enough to save the galaxy.